Okay. So first question, do we have anyone who doesn't understand Polish at all? Okay, cool. So it will be in English. Today I want to tell you something about JUnit, why I fall in love with this framework and what changed in comparison to JUnit 4, what improved, what they degraded in my impression, and what is totally fresh and funky. Okay, so starting from me, who am I? I'm Sebastian Malaca. As I was introduced, I'm working at UBS currently. We are not using JUnit 5 on production yet, but hopefully it will happen soon. I'm a speaker, blogger. I'm writing a lot. I'm trying to speak a lot, and I'm fanatic of object-oriented programming. That's why JUnit 5 is so cool for me. I really think they move forward into the object-oriented world. They really change the tool that JUnit 4 and previous version was into. They start to treat this tool as a application to deliver that they are delivering, and the whole testing environment is treated as their domain. And all the improvements in the framework itself shows that the way how they are thinking corresponds to the way how they are introduced those changes. First, the most important thing is separation of concern. Previously, we had huge JUnit 4. Everything was there. You include one dependency and you could do everything. Right now, it's a little bit different. They split their platform into 3 parts. So we've got JUnit platform, JUnit Jupyter, and JUnit Vintage. Vintage is grayed out because it's not required to use JUnit 5 at all. If you are starting a new project, if you don't have hard dependencies with the previous version of JUnit, you can skip this dependency and you can use only JUnit platform and JUnit Jupyter, and it's enough to start play with the JUnit. So what those 3 parts are? JUnit platform is a launcher. It allows us to run our tests. And what is extremely important, it provides test engine API. And this is an API that you can implement on your own. You can run your test with JUnit platform, but if you will implement test engine and wrap, for example, test ng into it, you can use test ng and run on this platform. There is no problem with that. Another thing, JUnit Jupyter is implementation of this test engine API, and this is the thing that you mostly will play with. So this is JUnit itself, whole functionality, everything that you can use, new programming model, new extension model, everything is in there. And JUnit Vintage is a support for previous versions, so JUnit 3 and 4, if needed. How it works in package. So this is picture taken directly from the JUnit page. So we've got the JUnit platform, and you can even see this JUnit platform ng. We've got implementation dependency by JUnit Vintage Engine, and the same with Jupyter Engine. And there is one tricky thing there, open test 4j. What is this? During the development of JUnit 5, and to be honest, even a little bit earlier, developer of JUnit figure out that there is no common exception, common way of informing about problems with the assertion, common standards and so on. So they extract from their framework a few examples, and they introduce separate package to build a standard. And right now, many developers are talking about that. There are, I know, something around 7-8 exceptions there with already defined and pretty clear API. So you can use it, and hopefully it becomes some base standard for all test framework. What do you need to play with JUnit 5? First and the most important, Java 8 or higher. In comparison to JUnit 4, where the support was starting from Java 5, and higher. Right now, you need to have Java 8. There is a huge support for Lambda expressions, many functionality based on this support. So without Java 8, there is no need, there is no possibility to use JUnit 5 at all. Another thing, which is, to be honest, really important for developers, is the IDE support. When I create a presentation, I know that IntelliJ already have this support, starting from version 2016.2, and it's pretty stable. With 2017, everything works pretty great. I had no possibility to verify how it works with Eclipse. From what I remember, there is need to install yet another plugin. So there is no support with Eclipse itself. You have to install some additional. But IntelliJ is better, so who cares? Anyway, okay. So let's move to the funny part. What is so cool in JUnit? All the changes around it. There is not so many new functionalities, but the way how they provide existing functionality into the new world, object-oriented world, it's pretty nice. For me, extremely descriptive, and right now I really can understand what is going on by reading all those annotations. So starting from the very beginning, the names. There are a few nice changes. So we had before class, after class. Right now we've got before all, after all. More meaningful for me. It's better to have methods before all, before each. It suggests that it's related to the test. I want to run this method before all tests, before each test. Before class was extremely related with the implementation, not with the domain itself. Another thing, also small, assert became assertions, assume become assumptions. So also for me it's more domain based. Another, to be honest, I don't really understand the reasoning behind that, but it also changed. Ignore into disable, category into tag, probably because Twitter has got hashtag, and maybe that's the reason. But there is more important things. First, starting from the very beginning, test annotation. What we could do with test annotation in JUnit 4. First thing, test annotation was a marker for JUnit. This method is a test. And being there, it was pretty meaningful. Test annotation means this is a test, great. But we had two additional things. We could define a timeout for our test, and we could define expected exception that have to be thrown during this test, which was like mixing up responsibilities. Timeout and catching exception, checking whether it was thrown or not, is not a part of the running test itself. It's not the definition of the test as we've got here. This is rather part of assertion. What I want to check if whether my test was able to succeed within given time, or whether my test succeed because thrown exception with given condition happened. What happened in JUnit 5 then? So first thing, test is only marker. Test stands only for the test, and that's it. One cool improvement from my perspective, we don't have to declare everything public anymore. It can be package private, which is a really tiny but nice improvement. So what happened with timeouts, exceptions? Timeout in JUnit 4. So first thing, this mix of test annotation plus timeout. Also we had a rule timeout. It allowed us to have this timeout and have the control over this. We had the separation. This is a test. This is a timeout itself. However, there was a couple of disadvantages. First thing, this timeout was applied to all tests. So it's everything or nothing. Another thing, when you look at a single test, you didn't know nothing about the timeout itself. You had to go to the very top of the test when the rule annotation stands behind the instance of the timeout rule. So it was not so obvious. Right now, we've got a session for that. What I want to do, I want to check whether my test succeed within given time. This is what I really try to do. And JUnit 5 allows us for that. There are two different type of assertion. First, waits until the method will finish, and then it will tell us, you expect to finish that in 13 seconds, but it took 50 seconds, for example. Another one interrupts the method execution after given time. So it doesn't wait once we will complete. It will just interrupt, which is also great if this is what we want to do. So another thing, what was in the test annotation itself? Exceptions. What was the way of asserting exception in JUnit 4? So first, test annotation and expected. Another thing, you could use try-catch block. Also the way to do that. Another thing, as with the timeout, we had a rule and an expected exception rule. And this was a little bit better than the timeout rule because there was an instance on the very top and you had to use this instance to do this assertion. So it was not so hidden before you. However, in JUnit 5, it's a little bit easier. What we want to do, we want to check whether during the invocation of the method exception happened. So this is what we are doing. We are using appropriate assertion. And this part is of course optional. I'm not always interested with verifying the message or some other things. If the instance of the exception, the type of the class, is the only thing I really would like to check, assert throws is enough. And that's it. Simple, clear, pretty descriptive. Another thing, parameterized tests built in JUnit 4. So we had to define runner parameterized class. First thing, we had a list of these parameters. Of course, we could use either field injection or constructor injection, but we had those parameters. So our test class was strictly related with the set of parameters. And last, we have to provide parameters. Three things, too many things for me. And the biggest disadvantage of this solution was that test class per parameters. That was for me overhead. In JUnit 5, it's simple. We've got parameterized test. This annotation extends a test annotation, so it only tells us that this is a test, but this is different type of the test. This is specification of our test annotation, so we need to provide parameters into that. And in this example, you can see only two types of source, value source. When you can provide a list of the parameters, there is attributes, strings, ints, and so on for the basic one. Also, I showed example with the method source, but there are a few others. There is enum source, there is CSV line source, when you can write all the lines in here, or you can read from some CSV file. But if it's not enough, you've got an interface that you can implement and return the attributes you really want to have. So it's pretty easy to extend, pretty easy to use, and once again, it's descriptive. If I want to have a test with the given parameters, I'm create a test. I don't need to create yet another class. I don't need to create a whole mechanism to run those parameters. No, it's built in framework itself. Also, if I want to reuse the parameters, Not a problem. I can extract method. I can implement my own implementation. This is not a problem, and it's extremely easy. Another thing, enclosed, it allowed in JUnit 4 to run tests in nested classes. So it was like having a runner on top, public static classes below, and that's all. In JUnit 5, the change is more or less like synthetic sugar, because they change one thing, runner on top, into nested annotation on top of each class. As you can see, no public anymore and no need for static anymore. So this is like, as I said, synthetic sugar. So what's bad? That was small changes, small improvements. And I noticed one thing that they changed for not so good. I think it was either regression rather than progress. Categories. Previously, we had categories, and each category was a marker interface, and it was like something nice. You defined a category. Definition of category was interface. It could be a class, but usually it was interface, and you use that. Right now in tag, it says you are using strings. Strings are not so cool. You cannot you cannot depend on the string as much as on the interface itself. Also, of course, I can extract it to some I don't know, enumeration constant, but this is like hacky way. Here, when I did a rename of a category, it did whole change for me without a problem. Here, it's not so easy. And I'm not so convinced that everyone always will extract those strings to somewhere else. Hopefully, they will get back to the previous solution, or they can find out something even better. So, what's new in JUnit 5? Starting from something small, display name. Of course, we all know that name of the test have to be descriptive. Name of the class also should be descriptive. But right now, if you want to use something more human readable, you can do that. You are just using annotation, display name. You put the string into it, and when you will run, for example, your test suite in IntelliJ, instead of those names, should do something, it will display the name from the attribute. What is cool or funny, you can use emoji. So you can do whatever you want. Whatever it can be put as a string, you can put that and it will be used. Nice. Another thing, assertAll. You can, as I said in the very beginning, you can use lambdas. You can really, based on the Java 8 features, and they introduce one cool thing, assertAll. It will run all the assertion. So it won't stop on the very first failure. Whatever will happen with any of those, it will run all of them, it will collect the result, and in the output you will receive information. This and this assertion failed. So you can collect all the information. For example, I use that for verifying the XMLs or JSON, whether the transformation was proper. No, I'm not always interested with stopping on the very beginning. I want to go through all fields, and then I want to see the result. It's really nice for such component tests. Another thing, assuming that instead of assumption in JUnit 4, when you had a line with your assumption and it went forward if assumption was true, or stopped on this at this moment, marked your test as ignored, and that's it. Right now, it's step forward. In my opinion, it's more readable. You know that all part in Lambda will happen only if assumption will be true. So this is the way how you can improve your assumption if you've got them in your code. Another thing, dependency injection. There are few things that you can use in your tests or in your test fixtures, like before each, after each. And we've got everything happens because this parameter resolver interface. It tries to resolve parameter, and if it's possible, it will, and you put into your declaration of your method such parameter, and parameter resolver can resolve that parameter, it will inject that into your method. We've got 3 built-in resolvers, which is test info, test reporter, repetition info. Test info provides some basic information about tests, so its name, tags over it. It can return method itself, class itself. Test reporter allows us to register some important information. It can be used if you want to build after the whole test suite will be run, whatever it will be successful or not run. You can collect all information and then produce some kind of report. And the all information you can put in there, then you can take it out and do something with that. Repetition info is a parameter used in one from another feature I will present in a short while, so I will leave it for the second. Of course, you can use those 3 parameters without doing anything. They are just built in the framework. But if you want to extend framework itself, if you want to need something additional, just implement the parameter resolver interface, do whatever you want to do, put the code you want to have in there into it, and just register this resolver. Thanks to this, you can use your own defined parameters within your test or within your test fixtures. How it looks? It looks like that. So you can use test info, test reporter, repetition info without any additional work. You are just putting the parameter into it. The order doesn't matter. It will just figure out how to do that. You can include more than one. Important information is that repetition info is only for repeated tests. So this is new feature of JUnit 5. And repeated test is something similar like parameterized test. So once again, this is extension of the test annotation itself. This is a test, but this is test that we will repeat. And as a first attribute, it takes the number of repetition. So for example, if you want to do some test for the algorithm and you want to provide some random data a couple of times, this is the way how you can achieve that. And in those methods, you can use this repetition info because it provides information of the current repetition, what's the index of it, and it provides information about total repetitions. Also, in repeated test, there is yet another attribute. As far as I remember, it's a display, and you can just put there a string that will be shown when you will run your test as a description of this test. So instead of the method name, you will just receive the string itself. Okay. So another thing, dynamic tests and test factory. What is that? You don't have to write a test. You don't have to use a parameterized test. You don't have to use repeated test. You can just create your test provider. Maybe there is some template that you would like to use for each and every test. Here, this is the way how we are creating tests. Each of these In my example, there are two. So dynamic test 1, second, will be treated as a regular test. So before test of the class, test in the class will be run, this method will be invoked. JUnit will collect all created tests. The dynamic test allows you to create the test itself. First parameter, this is the test name that will be used in the generated report. And second parameter is the method itself, or functionality that you would like to test. The return, the list that will be returned will be treated as a set of tests. JUnit will run them, will collect the information, and you will see the result as it would be separate tests within the test annotation. What is so great in JUnit 5? It's really using the Java 8. As you could see in all those examples, I used method reference, I used lambdas. There is no problem with that. There is plenty of functionality that have this built in, like this, assuming that, like assertAll. Thanks to this, your test can be shorter. You can reuse and provide more flexible solution. For example, whenever you've got you will invoke method, some assert method, you can provide supplier instead of a method message. Why it can be useful? Whenever whole message is pretty complex, and you want to postpone building the message only in case the test will fail, then you can provide this supplier. This method won't be invoked if test will succeed, which is cool, really. Another thing, all these extremely lot of usage of the lambda expression makes those tests more readable, more descriptive. Why JUnit is so great? Separation of consent and singular responsibility. This is the two main important things that they finally realize how to use. And JUnit 5 itself, for me, this is a proof that even tool for developers, even framework for developers, doesn't have to be written as yet another tool. It can provide meaningful domain. It can provide meaningful names. It can tells you what exactly you will receive. And also, due to this separation and single responsibility, it's easier to find what you want to get, what you really want to find. For example, you don't have this mix with the test annotation from JUnit 4. You want to run test, you've got a few assertions. You know how to do how to use them. You can create your own. There is no problem with that. Everything use pretty well described interfaces. So if framework itself doesn't provide enough, you can extend it extremely simple in extremely simple way. You can just do what we are doing in object-oriented world. Implement interface, register the usage of your implementation, and magic will happen. Okay, so I really encourage you to play with the JUnit 5. Starting from September, we've got stable version, so there should be no bigger changes with the framework itself. Also, if you are using IntelliJ starting from version 2016, there is no blocker for you. It will just work. You can take a look at the data documentation. There are a few examples how to use that, how to play with that. Also, I encourage you to read the manifest over the OpenTest4j project. There is a repository on GitHub. You can take a look at all of those assertions that they already figure out. You can provide your own feedback if you got your own ideas. This is something that still evolves. Okay, so that's all that I want to share with you regarding JUnit 4. If you got any question, I'm here for you. If not now, I will still be around. So.
Yes, I had some problems with configuring the JUnit 5 with Maven and IntelliJ IDEA 2016 too.
Okay.
And the problem was that there was some plugin created by JUnit, and it wasn't. It had some bugs in some specific version, and the version wasn't supported by the. So it was. There is a specific table with supported versions of JUnit 5 and specific versions of IntelliJ IDEA. And the problem is that so far there is some plugin created by JUnit which up to M3 or M4 version had some bugs.
I've got a Wi-Fi, I've got project with JUnit 5 and Maven and IntelliJ. We can play with that after the talk if you know the details.
Yeah, sure.
So
On the JUnit 5 main page, you can see the table with specific versions of.
on the very end with the yeah. Okay, so we can try to resolve the problem. Right now I need more details. But as I said, I've got a JUnit 5 project with all features used there, with usage of Maven, and I run it on IntelliJ. So
I can configure it to run from the IntelliJ itself and Maven at the same time. It was either the version which was
okay,
with Maven or with.
and you face the problem in both cases.
When I upgraded my IntelliJ to 2017, there was no problem at all. And
What kind of version of 2016? Or
I had 2016 2, 2016 5, and I had problem.
okay, so you know that could be because JUnit 5 is still fresh, and before this September they changed a lot. For example, the mechanism of parameterized functionality was moved into the different package, which was cool. This step forward to the separation, but it changed.
Yeah, and in most of the projects, it's still not stable enough.
That's why we don't have it on production yet. Okay? So, something more?
Do you have some experience with migration from the Unit 4 to 5?
In progress. I had one project which was extremely easy. I didn't even have to use JUnit Vintage because we didn't use any deeply hidden JUnit 4 features. So migration was just change the dependency, and it just worked. Another thing, if you had a problem, you can try with there is in JUnit platform, there is specific runner to put on very top of your JUnit 4 or JUnit 3 tests, and it should do the job. If not, then you have to define, give more details about the problem. But usually, in most cases, that solves the problem. Okay? So thank you very much.